Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Closing the First Deal. Today, we have the honor of having Ashawn, who is based out of the Poconos area, joining us to talk about his first deal experience. So, Ashawn, how are you today?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on.
I appreciate it. I appreciate you being here. So let us know. Let's jump right into it. Can you elaborate what inspired your real estate journey?
Well, that's a loaded question in my mind, but
Yes.
listen, I grew up in the projects in the Bronx. Owning a home wasn't a thing. You know what I mean? You were just gonna, you've seen generations of people sit in front of the building your whole life, then their kids sit in front of the building and run the drug game their whole life, and it just was a thing where everybody just did that, right? Um, I was told you're going to college. You ain't going to be in front of the building. You're going to do something different. I don't know how we're going to pay for college, but you're going to college. I went to college. I graduated from college. I got my master's. I became a teacher. I wound up going back to the same projects as a teacher after graduating and teaching in the neighborhood where I grew up. And I felt like I had to do that, but 16 years of teaching, I decided to leave teaching and go into real estate. And I became a realtor. But prior to becoming a realtor, I bought my own home. And I bought my own home only because my mother left the projects and bought her own home. And in doing that, she left that project apartment to me. So I left
Yeah.
college, came back to that project apartment to teach out of that project apartment and watched her, you know, become a homeowner. So um, I watched her do that. And it's funny because our whole existence in the projects was we're going to own a home. We're going to be homeowners. We're going to move out of here. We're going to buy a house. You know what I mean? And 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years go by.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, okay. But by the time I went into college, they finally did it. And they bought a house in the Poconos. And my stepfather was is heavy into the Native American culture and lifestyle. He, tapped into his heritage and really explored who he was and became heavy into the Native American culture and lifestyle. And the Poconos is a very is a huge Indian and Native American influence up here. So he took my mom up here to kind of get away, like anybody who's lived in New York City for a little bit of time has seen the advertisements about owning in the Poconos and buying a home and what you can buy and all that stuff in the newspapers and all of that stuff. So he took advantage of that when it first started in the 80s and 90s, and they bought their home, I think, in the early 90s. So while I was in just going to college, they bought the home up here, and I was able to kind of commute back and forth between the Bronx and Pennsylvania and help them with, establishing themselves in Pennsylvania. And I was able to see what that's about and see what you can acquire for the amounts of money that they're saying that you can, acquire homes for. And at the time, it was, anywhere from $150,000 to $300,000. You can buy anywhere from a two-bedroom to a four-bedroom home with a two-car garage, two bathrooms, um, somewhere in that, under that umbrella. And they were able to get a four-bedroom, two-bath, two-car garage, two-story home on an acre of land for I want to say maybe about 180,000.
Well,
Um,
that's crazy.
yeah, and they bought
Rare
that in.
nowadays.
I want to say they bought that in 92 or 93, right? So at the time, I'm thinking that's a lot of money. Like you come from the Bronx, you come from the projects, you don't know what real estate is, you don't know, you don't have a frame of reference with regard to what's a lot of money. Anything over 10, 20, $30,000 is a lot of money, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
when you don't have an idea of what the whole home buying process entails, and what it really, you're going from the projects. You make a phone call, I got a leak, they come and fix it. You go out into the hallway and throw your garbage in the compactor or the incinerator. You don't gotta have to pay for garbage. You don't have to shovel snow. You don't have to deal with cutting grass. You don't have to fix anything. You know what I mean? You have no responsibilities as a renter, much less being in the projects. You really just make a phone call and it gets handled on their time. So as a homeowner, we really were immersed in figuring out what to do as homeowners. So as a child of my parents who never owned a home and didn't know how to do stuff and didn't know how to fix things, I was the handyman in the apartment. So if something needed to be fixed, I figured it out and figured out how to fix whatever needed to be fixed. And now I'm in college, so my stepdad wasn't that type of dude. My brother was doing his thing. My sister wasn't about that. So it was either pay for it or I got to come from hundreds of miles to make it happen. So they worked their way through the whole home ownership thing. And by the time I graduated, I met my wife, and I had been teaching for, I want to say, maybe about 4 or 5 years, and we stumbled across. I realized that as a teacher in New York City, they had this program that allowed you to take advantage of how to become a homeowner. They walked you through the whole process, and it was flawed in hindsight, but it was something I needed at the time. I had no clue. I didn't know what to do. Couldn't rely on my parents who didn't remember what they went through and maybe didn't go through a positive experience, or experience they could convey to me. So I went through this process, and after sitting down with these people, it was like a credit counseling type thing, and walk you through the ins and outs of the whole buying process. I realized that in New York City, I probably wasn't going to be able to become a homeowner. Um, the average house in New York City is between 500 and $1 million, and you're going to get a patch of grass in the front and a patch of grass in the back, and your neighbors are going to be right up on you. And yeah, you own a home, but that's not the idea of home ownership that I had. You know what I mean? You think of the picket fence, you think of a little bit of land, you think of at least third of an acre, half an acre, something like that, where
Mm.
you got some elbow room. You know what I mean? Your neighbors can't hear
Yeah.
what you're talking about. And that's not what my experience was going to be had I bought a home in New York City. So once we went through that process, they were like, "Oh, you owe this amount of money. You got this back money that you need to pay off, and your credit score needs to be this and this and this and that." And something just said to me, "Just go up to Pennsylvania and see what they got to say." And sure enough, me and my wife decided, let's just go and see what they're talking about. We got a 3 to 5 year plan, and we'll
Yeah.
see what they say. We went up and we saw some houses for the first weekend. And after we saw a few houses, the guy told us, and this was around, I'd say 2007, 2008, around that time where that real estate bubble was happening. And he basically said to us, we were like, listen, we're looking 3 to 5 years. And he was like, listen, I could get you in a house in 6 months. And we did the Scooby Doo, like, this this guy in New York was just telling us that we got to fix this, we got to do this, we got to, and you're telling us you can get us in the house without fixing that in 6 months. And the houses we were looking at were like, 250, between 200 and 275.
Mm.
So we was like, okay, you're serious. And we spoke to the mortgage person, and it was like, yes, we're serious. We could get you in. And hindsight being 2020, they was giving mortgages to anybody, whether you could afford it or not, right? So luckily, me and my wife made a good income.
What year
Uh,
was this? Around what time? I'm just trying to
uh,
figure out what the price was looking like.
2007?
'07.
07?
2007.
The end of '07. I want to say we closed in December of '07, and we was in the house in
So
January of
pretty much the height of the market at that time before it crashed. They crashed a year later, pretty much.
Listen, they were giving mortgages to anybody. Listen, let me explain to you. They couldn't find a comp for my house. In 100 miles, they couldn't find a comp for my house. My house is 6 bedrooms, 4 full bathrooms, 3 floors, almost 4,000 square feet. We paid 229 for that.
That's
229 for that in
crazy.
2000. It was the end of 2006, beginning of 2007. We paid 229 for that. They couldn't find a comp for 100 miles. They did whatever comps they could find. They took my income and my wife's income on the side, not even being on the mortgage, and took a cosigner not being on the mortgage. They did all kinds of stuff you can't even do now
Yeah.
to get us in
Oh,
this mortgage.
wow.
We had an adjustable rate mortgage for 15%. That was gonna it was 3% and it was gonna jump to 15% in 6 months.
So how did you get out of
That's
that? How,
wild.
We
how did you?
refinanced. They promised us that we could refinance. Meanwhile, I didn't even know what that meant. How you gonna promise me I could refinance? That's contingent on my credit.
That's
That's contingent
wild.
on our credit. If we jacked up our credit, we can't refinance.
That's
They
true.
told
So
us
what happened?
they told us whatever we needed to hear to get into this mortgage, and we did it. And fortunately enough for us, we were able to refinance in 6 months. We refinanced in 6 months. We streamlined another 3 months after that. We streamlined another 3 months after that. And then we got our mortgage at a 30-year fixed rate at 3.75%. And that's where we've been for the last 12 years. So
So
we
it
Yo,
were
worked
y'all
out.
got
we were
lucky.
lucky to get where we are right now, bro. We wouldn't even have
Yeah.
this house if we didn't just come up here and do this. You know what I mean? Like we'd have been still
Yeah.
renting in New York. We'd have still been in somebody's apartment making them rich if we just didn't come up here and just make it happen and do what we could and just kind of keep our credit right and just do what we had to do. Mind you, I'm commuting from the Poconos to New York as a teacher for 12 years.
That's wild.
So how was that
Yeah,
I
commute? How was that commute
Yeah,
for you?
how is that commute? How long is
that
that?
commute was bonkers, yo. I mean, it's technically from where I lived to where I worked was a legit exactly 100 miles. So I would have to leave. I'd have to wake up at 4:30 in the morning. I'd have to be out by 5:15 to get there by 6:45 to open the doors for the students by 7. And I did that
What?
for 12 years.
What was that? 2 hour commute? 3 hour commute?
It was at that time in the morning, it's about an hour 15, hour and a half.
Okay.
If I don't get across the George Washington Bridge before 4 o'clock, it's a 3 hour drive back home.
Oof.
That's
Right.
wild.
So I gotta finish detention by 3:30, get in my car, kick everybody out the doorway on my way out. Get out my way. I don't want to hear nothing. Tell me tomorrow. Because if I'm not across that
Yeah.
bridge before 4 o'clock, trust me, a minute after 4 o'clock, it's a 2.5, 3 hour drive, yo. It's
You had
no
it
joke.
down to the second, it
I had
sounds
it down to the second.
like.
So
I had it down.
what do you think inspired that perseverance in both your mom, her significant other, and then you and your wife, right? Because there were other areas, there could have been other opportunities, but you chose that. So
But
what led to you choosing that and sticking with it? Because there were opportunities between 2007 and now where you could have sold and then moved closer to the city.
my home situation, like I'd gotten custody of my son, full custody of my son. So part of me getting full custody of my son was the fact that I lived in Pennsylvania, had this house. So
Mm.
that played into it. I have my daughter, she's up here, going to school and all that stuff. So it was our family situation that played into that. I had to maintain our family, so I just did what I needed to do that. You know what I mean?
So being an educator and being a dad, you're able to travel into the New York City Department of Education, and then kind of see how your daughter is being educated. So now you're comparing your quality of education while being brought up to your daughters, right? So
Oh,
were there any?
it's even deeper than that because my daughter's going to school up here, and because I had joint custody with my son had to go to school down there. So we had joint custody. So even though we had joint custody, he's still going to school down there. So where I'm teaching, there's 3 schools in the building, and I was able to organize that my son goes to one of the middle schools in the same building where I'm at. So I was able to finesse all of that. You know what I'm saying? So even though my son still got to go to school in New York, I got him going to school in the building that I'm in the school where I'm at, so that I could keep an eye on him. And I was able to see the difference in what my daughter was getting versus what my son's getting. And it wasn't much that I could do because the courts mandated that I had to do A, B, C, and D because I got custody, but I gotta, make his mother, available to him in this way. But by the time he had graduated from middle school, that was when we had joint custody. By the time he graduated middle school, I had full custody. So now he's able to go to school up here with me.
So, how would you say the purchase of real estate can change the trajectory of one's real estate? I'm sorry, one's educational experience, because you're seeing the contrast, right? So,
Listen, it was a big deal because the courts favor women. But she was living in Brooklyn renting, and had I been living in New York City renting, she would have got custody. If I didn't have a better home situation, haven't had acquired real estate, I wouldn't have gotten custody. I believe that that's what got me custody. The fact that I was able to have a home, the fact that I was able to have space, the fact that I was able to have a better schooling situation, the fact that I was able to provide a better lifestyle for my son got me custody. And it's funny because at the time, this was, I want to say 2011 or 12, I hadn't experienced many men getting custody. After
That's
I got
true.
custody, I start hearing all of these other men who get custody, and I'm like, high five, high five. We got a new
Hey.
paternity. You know what I'm saying? The courts are starting to see things a little differently, but it's not so much bashing women so much as praising men and having men stand up and do their job the way they're supposed to do it. Because the narrative for men has been bad for so long that it needs to be different. You know what I mean? That men are doing their job, that men are standing up and being providers and doing what needs to be done in the absence of maybe a mother, or even in their presence, just doing better, you know what I mean? And providing that a lifestyle for their children.
so what was the difference in the quality of education between daughter and son? You being an educator, what were you able to see? We can
Well,
come back to that. We can come back to that.
no, no, I'll briefly go into it. I mean, you've been an educator in New York City. There's a lot of stuff that's in the mix that just can't be taken out. You have to deal with it. There's home stuff, there's socioeconomic stuff, there's psychological stuff, there's all kinds of stuff. You just can't teach a kid in New York City. Children in New York City are not just coming to school to be taught. They're coming to school to be fed. They're coming to school to be counseled. They're coming to school to be, managed behaviorally. They're coming to school to see a positive male role model because they don't got one at home. They're coming to school for a lot of other reasons other than just getting the reading, writing, and arithmetic.
So
In
I
Pennsylvania, it's not like that.
okay.
It's not like that. People have left New York City for those reasons because they've established themselves as being able to provide for themselves in those manners, and they just want to be able to give their children an education. And when you bring your child to school in Pennsylvania, minus Philadelphia, um, you're providing that to your child. So there's not as much of those other things that you have to deal with. So whereas you have more of the American experience in school. Those school scenes that you see on the movies where you have the campus, the high school campus where people have lockers in the hallway, and you got any sports team, you got every football field, basketball court, baseball field, soccer field, you got all of that on the campus. That wasn't in existence in New York City. You got 4 or 5 schools in one building in New York City. You know what I'm saying? And they all have their own principals, and they don't have a football team. They might have a basketball team. They may not have a baseball team. They don't have those extracurriculars. You know what I'm saying? So you don't get that all-American schooling experience in New York City versus what my daughter was able to get. You know what I'm saying? By the time my son got to high school, he was able to get that. And we was able to give him that experience. But middle
I think
school,
there's a
it
I
wasn't.
think there's a big lesson in that though for your son, right? And I think without it even probably being noticed or recognized, there's something in your bloodline or in the lineage that was meant for this to be your journey, right? Your son had to experience what you had to endure, what your mother decided to do, right? We're going to go all the way to the Poconos because we need this fresh start. And look at all this space. And then your son, oh, my dad owns a house. Great. But damn, now I got to go to school all the way in the city. So, with spending the 2 hours, 4 hours a day, depending on traffic, with his dad would be priceless moments. I could only imagine how many gems you were able to give him just during those car rides, which is going to help him develop into the man he's going to become.
Well, it's different. I mean, you would think that that's the case, but 4:30 in the morning, what you think he doing?
I'm talking about on the way back, though. On the way back.
On the way back, what you think he doing? He sleep.
Oh, I
But
was
there
going to
were
say,
times where we were able to connect and talk and whatever. You know what I'm saying? I'm not gonna say that that didn't happen, but a lot of the time he's knocked out. You know what I'm
but
saying?
just waking up to get in the car, to travel 2 states to accomplish a mission, a goal, is something that's going to be ingrained in him for the rest of his life.
I agree. I agree.
So with preparing, right? Because we know that New York was super expensive even during that time. Were there any like financial steps you've taken as a New York City teacher? Personally, my trick was maxing out in my retirement and then saving in addition to maxing out, and which allowed me to realize I was over prepared. Were there any like steps
Mhm.
that you've taken, or was it
Here's the
just still
crazy
saving?
thing, bro. Here's the crazy thing. Well, we were expecting, this is the reason why we set a 3 to 5 year plan. We were like, we got to save at least 30, 40,000 or whatever to make a down payment. We got to have closing costs. We got to have a deposit. We got to have this. We got to have that. Listen, we literally said, yo, let's just go up to Pennsylvania and see what they're saying. We went up 2 weekends and they said we could have you in the house in 6 months. 8 months later, we was in the house. Not only was we in the house, we had minimal costs. We had to make a down payment of maybe like our complete out-of-pocket cost was maybe $5,000, and at closing we got $4 or $5,000 back. So like the experience was surreal. It was like this is not the average experience, you know what I'm saying? First off, we was in a deal that we probably shouldn't have been in, that is not ideal for the average person. We had an adjustable rate mortgage that was set to go bonkers in 6 months. We were told that we would be able to refinance in 6 months, but had we made any missteps between the time we got the house and those 6 months, we wouldn't have been able to refinance. You know what I'm saying? Luckily, we were on top of our game. I was able to make some phone calls, do what we needed to do, and refinance and do what we needed to do to kind of get in a better situation. But the truth of the matter is this was God. It was God ordained. Like it was a reason that we was able to do this. It shouldn't have happened. You know what I'm saying? We shouldn't have been in Pennsylvania. We should have been somewhere in New York, either renting or buying something. And we couldn't buy something. So it was like, what was the next option? We
Or
didn't know
maybe
nobody else. Like we knew people in Florida, but we wasn't going that far. You know what I'm saying? Why not just go and see what they talking about up there in Pennsylvania? And it just wound up working out, man.
So have you motivated or inspired some of your family in New York to move to Pennsylvania now?
It's hard because people look at us like we crazy. They're like, you did that drive for 12 years? I'd never do that. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? My job is here. They ain't got no money up there like that. And they don't. You know what I'm saying? And it's funny because I left teaching after 16 years and I went into real estate. So now the real estate market is jacked up. So now I'm substitute teaching again.
Yeah.
So it's like a full circle. But now the real estate market is picking back up again. So it's weird, you know what I mean? I can't convince nobody to do what I did because they come and visit and they're like, I could never do this drive every morning.
It's a
Or at
lot. It's a
night, depending on
commitment.
what their schedule is, you know what I mean? Like if you work at night, you ain't trying to do this drive in the middle of rush hour, you know what I mean?
So the irony with that is people will commute in New York City an hour and a half just to stay within the boroughs, but won't think about, you know what? I wake up on Saturday morning, this is what I have. I have that on Sunday morning. I have that on all weekends, vacations throughout the summer. But it takes again, it takes a person that thinks in a certain with a certain mind frame. So
Agreed, agreed. Listen, for 12 years, I ignored my surroundings. I didn't know what was around me for 12 years. I would come home, hang out in my house, maybe go to the store, go here and there, maybe experience something around me immediately or whatever. But I didn't know the back roads. I didn't know what was over here in the next town. I didn't know what was up here. You know what I'm saying? For 12 years. When I got into real estate and had to learn my surroundings, I was like, this has been here all of this time. And
It's
I didn't know about it
crazy.
because all I'm doing is in my tunnel going back and forth to New York. And this little pumpkin patch is here, this orchard is here, this winery is here, this casino is here. You know what I mean? Like they had they had any and everything up here that I've never experienced. And I didn't experience it for 12 years because I'm commuting.
That's
not only
crazy.
that, when you're coming from the New York City mind state, it's 100 of everything: 100 bowling alleys, 100 pool halls, 100 restaurants. But when you go to a place like Pennsylvania, or in my case, my mother lives out in the Poconos, you realize you don't need that many. One or two good options, cool. And as I'm getting on different back roads off the highway, I'm like, man, they got a golf course here. They
Yep.
have paintball in there. Like there's so many activities, so many things to do, and I see why the Poconos is so popular for on the weekends, especially.
Listen, there's a steady stream of New York and New Jersey people coming up here on Friday, bro. Like the
Mm.
traffic jam coming up here is bonkers. And this has been the number one spot for Airbnb. It's been the number one spot in the nation for like the last couple years, yo. It's ridiculous. I done sold a lot of houses just strictly off of Airbnb. Somebody whispered in New York and New Jersey ear and said you could get rich in the Poconos, Airbnb, get it. And I just been selling houses just off of Airbnb alone.
That's crazy. So would you do Airbnb?
Me and my wife talked about it. It's funny because we're empty nesters now, and like I told you, I got 6 bedrooms, 4 full bathrooms. I got a full in-law suite in my basement. So we're thinking about renovating it and just renting it. You know what I mean? Like on some Airbnb stuff. So the problem is that we got to redo our septic system. So we can't have somebody down there that we got to manage with the septic system. So until
Mm.
we do the septic system, we can't do that. So we've been entertaining it, but the market is so saturated now that a lot of people are just long-term renting now because if you don't have the Hachi Tachi 3000 Airbnb with the pool table, the hot tub, and the all the amenities and stuff, that if you just got the basic Airbnb, it's gonna sit there for
Yeah.
a while. You know what I'm saying? So now that everybody has an Airbnb up here, you got to have something different that stands out. So we recognize that, and until we can actually provide that, we decided we're not gonna do it.
Do you intend on staying out in the Poconos area, or do you want to get closer to New York City?
It's funny that you say that. I would never go back to New York. Y'all can have that.
He's
Me
like,
and my
I got
wife is
out, I
clear.
come back.
We're not going back to New York. That's not in the cards. But we are entertaining leaving the country and just kind of like we're entertaining a few different places, Southeast Asia, some places in South America, just because cost of
The
living is
cost of
ridiculous.
living.
It's ridiculous. You got a high standard of living with the cost just ridiculously low. Like a couple of my friends just went out there for a month and they just sent video after video after video of different places that they went: Indonesia, Bangkok, Philippines, different places. And when you tell me you could stay in a hotel for 5 days for $200, five-star hotel with breakfast included, I could
Yeah.
live, I could live in a hotel and just go hotel to hotel from month to month. He's like,
Hmm.
Yo,
yo, you can stay in a hotel for
seriously.
like $500-$600 a month, and you ain't got to pay for nothing. I'm like, huh? And the food from you can have 3 square meals of good, clean, healthy food for like less than $30 a day.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
like,
true.
we hustling in reverse here.
Seriously.
We
YouTube
hustling.
has definitely opened up our knowledge of everything of happening around the world. Like I know you said directly it was your friends that showed you. And I personally have been to like Thailand and Bangkok around there. And it's true. Like it's so cheap out there. Like even my sister has been talking about moving. She's thinking Costa Rica or some other. I told her, I was like, wherever you go, I'm following. Like,
For real,
there's
like
so
it don't make no sense to stay here. Plus, with the political climate and just all the costs just raising, it's like we hustling in reverse. Like they lying to the world about what it is here versus what you could have someplace else.
Hmm.
that is true. That is true. I guess the
That-
goal is to build up our portfolio to then have the option to choose
right.
where we want.
Right. The
Yeah.
options here the opportunity to make money here is different from other places. You don't have those opportunities. So, yeah, you have opportunities to kind of, upward mobility is different here versus other places. But once you make a certain amount of money, it don't make sense to stay here no more. That's what I've resigned to.
That's true. That is true. So like, um, so do you intend on purchasing additional properties?
It's funny you say that. Me and my brother formed the LLC, Major League Renovations, and we haven't done anything with it yet. Um, and our plan was to build a family compound somewhere where we could just kind of, anybody in the family can go there whenever they want, right? You
Yeah.
can live there if you want, you can visit there, you can stay there, you can do whatever, short term, long term, whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
Um, and that's ultimately the vision. We had like I mentioned before, we had a podcast. It was Brothers in Arms, fully automatic podcast, but it was underneath the um, gun company that we had, Major League Shooters. So we
Yeah.
had Major League Renovations, Major League Shooters. My brother is a breeder, so he has Major League Kennels. So we were trying to do all of this thing under the Major League brand, right?
Yeah.
And we're still working on it. You know what I mean? So one day, soon come.
That's good. That's good. At least you have the vision. Like everything takes time. You just got to keep working at it and eventually everything will fall into place. But I feel like from a young age, just listening to your story, your mom was basically feeding you the vision of you're going to go to college, you're going to get out of the Bronx. And you've done exactly that. And now you're telling yourself the vision of what you want for the future. So it's only a matter of time. Like
Another
I
time.
feel like the
Every
next
time you
interview
say
we
it,
do, you'll be like, I did it. Like
hopefully. Every time you say it and believe it, you create it. So I'm trying to do that.
That's what's up. That's what's up. So what does generational wealth mean to you?
Not having to work. My kids not having to work. My grandkids not having to work unless they want to further the generational wealth. That's what it means to me. You shouldn't have to be obligated to work to pay the bills. If I could push that in any, forward in any way, then I hope to be able to.
That's good. So do you feel like when you had your kids at home, did you teach them like any financial things that you may not have known when you were younger?
No, because I didn't know. I'm still
Yeah,
learning. You know what I mean? I'm still learning investments and real estate and how to put together a portfolio and um, managing bills and things of that nature. So it's who teaches you that, right?
yeah,
You teach yourself that and then teach the next who come behind you. Unfortunately for me, I had my son at 23. I was in the crib
young.
myself. You know what I mean? Like I can't
That's
imagine my children having children at 23. Y'all was glorified teenagers. You know what I mean? My
Yeah.
children. So, I mean, for me to be out of the house and living on my own and having a child and all of that, I was further along just because I had different life experiences. But the way I raised my kids, they were sheltered. So for them to be
Mm.
23, they just stepping into the world. So I know
Yeah,
that they didn't have the experiences I had. So like, that's why I say glorified teenagers.
that's what's up though. That's the stuff that you like understand, um, like the different dynamics of like how you were raised and you were able to give your children a different experience from your own. You know what I mean? Like that's awesome in itself because that's helping them see the world differently through a different lens that you may not have seen. And I guess some people will say like maybe they're not as street smart, but like they're maybe smarter in other areas. So that's something that you did give to them, which is absolutely amazing. Um,
Not
yeah.
only are they not street smart, but they don't know my full story. So there's a lot of question marks on their end, but one day the gaps will be filled in. You know what I'm saying?
I think that's every kid's dream is to know their parents' full story and just to like hear it out. I remember one time I was talking to my mom and I was trying to record her telling her story. She was like, no, 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 turn that phone off. But I was like, Ma, like,
Listen,
this is
you
so
might not want to hear
juicy.
your parents' full story, man. You
Yeah.
might not be able to handle it. I remember I was talking to my son. I remember sitting in the car. Matter of fact, one of the conversations I had with my son in the car one day, and he said to me, I would rather have a horrible life and experience life than just having to drive back and forth in this car like this. And I'm like, you don't know what you're saying, bro. You have no idea what you're saying. Oh, none.
Yeah.
You better be happy you in this cocoon going back and forth, man. And sure enough, he going through some things, but it's life, you know what I'm saying?
That is life. You don't know what you don't know.
You don't know
This
what you
is
don't know.
that's crazy. That is crazy. Well, I guess if Gavin doesn't have any questions, we will go ahead and wrap it up. Thank you so much for joining us today. Like, I really enjoyed listening to your story and you sharing your experience. I feel like anyone listening from wherever you at, like you can really transform your story. You just have to believe that you can. And sometimes you have people around in your circles that are motivating and speaking life into you. So whatever you can do, at least maintain a positive mindset, and eventually that will guide you to achieve your goals and dreams. So thank you guys for joining. Peace.
Thank you for having me, guys.